Today, we are going to talk about adding and subtracting fractions. So we've already had a lesson talking about turning fractions into decimals, and we're going to apply that strategy today to adding and subtracting. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to fluently or successfully add fractions and also successfully subtract fractions. So we're going to go ahead and make our title pretty simple: adding and, you guessed it, subtracting fractions. Okay, so we're really just going to do a few examples. Our examples are going to show you what you're supposed to do. You know a lot of these steps because we've covered them when we talked about turning fractions into decimals. So the first example that we're going to do, let me get a different color so it's prettier for y'all. First example we are going to do is 3/5 plus 2/4. Now I'm going to go ahead and give us some answer choices down below. So we have a little multiple choice action going on here. So A, we have 2/8. B, we have 1 1/10. And C, we have 24/8. Okay. So we talked about how you are going to take this and turn it into a decimal. You see a fraction, turn it into a decimal. Always, always, always. Fraction, decimal. Fraction, decimal. I need my calculator, I gotta do it. So, you're gonna take 3 divided by 5, and that gives you 0.6. Now remember, we talked about how you always need to write your decimal back with the corresponding fraction, or the fraction that it goes with, so you don't get mixed up. So for this, I'm just going to write the 0.6 directly below 3/5. I wrote it in a different color so you can kind of tell that these two go together without getting the 6 and the 5 mixed up. I know I got small handwriting, I'm trying to write big for y'all, but it doesn't always work out for me. Alright, I'm going to bring my sign down. The operation I need to do is addition, so I'm just going to bring it down. I still need to do addition. It doesn't matter that I'm changing it from a fraction to a decimal, I still need to add. Now I need to turn 2/4 into a fraction. So just 2 divided by 4 equals, now I have 0.5. So I'm going to write it below the fraction that it goes with, or the corresponding fraction. Okay? I am going to go ahead and turn every one of my answer choices into a decimal, because then I can match whatever my answer is with my answer choices. So I'm going to turn 2/8, 2 divided by 8 equals, into a decimal, which is 0.25. So I'm going to write it directly next to it, 0.25. Now this one we talked about when we specifically had a rule for when we have a mixed number. When we have a mixed number and we're turning it into a decimal, you leave the whole number alone. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one and write it down. And then I'm going to deal with turning my fraction into a decimal. So now I'm going to do 1 divided by 10. 1 divided by 10 equals 0.1. So I'm going to add that 1.1. So this is exactly the same as this. You left your whole number as a whole number. The next one that we're gonna do is 24 over 8. So 24, oops, I accidentally hit a decimal, y'all. Be careful, don't do that. See, I was just making a mistake for you guys. I'm not perfect either. 24 divided by 8 equals 3. Okay, we all know what 3 is. Okay, so now let's go back up to our problem. And we're gonna type it in. So 0.6 plus 0.5 equals 1.1. Do we have that as an answer choice? All right, 1.1, is that the same as 0.25? Nope, I'm gonna cross that out. 1.1, 1.1, are those the same? Last time I checked, a 1.1 was the same as a 1.1. But I'm gonna go ahead and look at my next answer just in case, because it never hurts to rule it out. Is 1.1 the same as 3? Nope, not at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and cross that one out. So you know for sure that your answer is B. So you know 3/5 plus 2/4 equals 1 and 1/10. You did it all using decimals. Okay, now that's adding. The next thing we're gonna do is subtracting fractions. So our example for subtracting fractions is actually gonna be a mixed number. Let me scoop this up. It's got a little glare, I'm sorry guys. So we're gonna do 2 and 1/4 minus 1 and 3/4. And we're also gonna have some answer choices down here. We're gonna go A is 1 and 2/4. And remember, anything I write down, I know this is an example, but it's still good to have in your notes so you can refer back to it. B is -1/2. Let me zoom in a little, sorry guys, I know, I told you I write small. And C is a +1/2. So I'm gonna turn 2 and 1/4 into a decimal. I leave the 2 alone. Leave your whole number alone. So I'm just gonna rewrite my 2 below it. 2, and then I got something, a little bit of extra. Not a whole number, but part of something else. So I'm going to divide 1 divided by 4 equals 0.25. So I'm gonna add that to the end of my 2. 2.25. I have to remember that I'm bringing my operation symbol down. I want to do subtraction. If I wanted to do subtraction up here, I want to do subtraction down here. Just because we changed it to a decimal doesn't change the operation sign. And we've got another mixed number. We're gonna leave that one alone. Just bring it down. Bring it down, bring it down. Okay, and we're gonna turn 3/4 into the decimal. 3 divided by 4 equals 0.75. So we're gonna add that behind our whole number. Now let's go ahead and do this math. We know we're gonna have to come over here and convert, but we can do this right now. So we have 2.25, move it over here, minus 1.75 equals. All right, so I know that this equals 0.5. answer choice A, and I see that it starts with a 1. Does our answer have a whole number with it? No, it doesn't have a whole number with it. So you could do a process of elimination and know that this is not the answer. For our example purposes, I'm going to go ahead and convert it because the more practice we have, the better we're going to be at this. So I leave that 1 alone, and then I am going to do 2 divided by 4. Okay, so I have 0.5. So I'm going to add my 0.5 here. We already talked about this. 0.5 is not the same as 1.5. So we can rule that one out. Now, let's do this one. We talked about in our previous notes how you leave the sign alone. This is a negative 1/2. It's going to stay negative. So I'm going to go ahead and write the negative. And now I'm going to convert my fraction into a decimal. I'm going to do 1, move it some, divided by 2. Well, that gave me 0.5. Well, that's what my answer is, right? My answer is 0.5. So maybe that's an option. All right, let's look at C. C is 1/2. So we're going to plug it in. So 1 divided by 2. Well, that one's 0.5. I have 2 answer choices that have a 0.5 in them, and my answer is 0.5. There's got to be something that's different. So I'm going to look really closely. And what's the difference between these two? Right here. Remember we had that negative sign? Negative 0.5 is not the same as 0.5. Negative is like owing somebody. So if I added a 0 here, that'd be like you owe me 50 cents. Okay? Down here, if I added a 0, that would be like you have 50 cents. And if we look at our answer choice, if we add a 0 here, are we owing anybody money? Is this negative? No, it's positive. So this would be like you having 50 cents. And if you have it, it's positive. So the only answer it can be is C, because it is a positive 0.5. And you may say, whoa, Ms. Buck, you started adding zeros at the end there. That's okay. I can add as many zeros as I want. The zeros at the end don't change the value of 0.5. As long as that part matches. Now this is only after a decimal and the last number. You can add as many zeros as you want. It doesn't change the value, which is similar to when we were talking about rational integers and whole numbers. They had a decimal, it was like 111.0. That 0.0 didn't change anything. Okay? So that is how you add and subtract fractions. You're going to convert everything to a decimal, including the answer choices, and make sure that you keep your negative signs negative and your positive